Now that you've written your first equations in slope-intercept form, I'm going to ask that you graph those. Something we need to be able to do. Um, so we're going to take a look at 3 situations here in this video. I'm going to graph all 3 equations, and then I'll show you what I want you to do for your graphing. So you were given equations, a situation like this. You have a slope of -2, a y-intercept of -1, and you had to write an equation. And we wrote that equation in this form. We wrote it in the form of y equals mx plus b, where m is my slope and b is my y-intercept. M is how we move, b is the beginning point. So you looked at a problem like this. You took your pencil and you wrote that y equaled, and I put 2 in for n, -2 in for m, and I wrote -2x and plus b. So b in this case is -1. So I have an equation that says y equals -2x minus 1. So in order to graph this, I have to have graph paper. So if you don't have your own graph paper, please go and take some of mine off the shelf. After you get your graph paper, you will need to make an XY axis for each equation as you're working. So I'm making my XY axis here. One going across is x, one going up and down is y. I start this then by looking at my equation y equals -2x minus 1. So look at the equation. Where do we begin? Where do we start? And where we start is -1. So I'm going to, on my xy coordinate plane, I'm going to start at the origin, and I'm going to go down 1, and this is where I'm starting on the y-axis. We always start this on the y-axis. So we'll start at the beginning number, this number back here. Now I have a slope. How do I move? I'm going to move down 2. Keep in mind, there's a number written underneath this -2, and that is 1. It's positive 1. -2 over 1. So I'm going to, on my graph, go to my starting spot of a -1 that I just made. I'm going to count down 2, write 1, and place a second dot. Then I'm going to do it again. I'm going to go down 2, write 1, and write in a third dot. Now I have 3 dots. That's going to allow me to make a nice line. So that way I can say, all right, here's where all the possible answers are that will work in this equation. So I'll take and draw my line right through the dots as best I can. Draw the line through. Looks like I need to adjust this a little bit. So now I have my line made, and I do need to remember to do one thing at the end of the lines. I need to put arrows, because these lines do go on forever in both directions. So we brought arrows at the end of this to show that I could keep going and putting in negative numbers for x to find answers, or I can put in positive numbers. That's essentially what this graph does for you. All right, so that's the first one. Here we had a negative slope. Our line was going down. We had a y-intercept of -1. Next graph, the second or the third of 3 graphs that I'm going to show you. This is a slope of 1/4, a y-intercept of 3. So if we're going to write our equation, we're going to say y equals, our slope is 1/4 for m, x plus b, in this case is a positive 3, so I say plus 3. To make, this is like an answer you have on your paper. So I'm now going to make a new xy coordinate plane on my graph paper. And I'm making that now. I want to remember that this is the x-axis, and I want to remember that this is the y-axis, and I'm going to start at plus 3. So I'm going to start at plus 3. So I go here, and I'm going to count up 3 because we start on the y-axis, and I'm going to put my first dot at plus 3. I have a slope of 1/4, up 1, right 4. Go to that dot, go up 1, right 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, dot. Now it looks like I'd be going over outside of my space. That's okay to go outside a little bit. I'm going to do that again, up 1 and right 4, and put my next dot. Now I have 3 dots. Got to draw my line. Get your straight edge. Use a straight edge for this. Try not to do this freehand. Use a straight edge so you can get things straight. It's important to be accurate. So now I've drawn my line through my 3 dots. I'm putting my arrows on the end to say that this will continue on forever in both directions. And I have now graphed a second line. That line has a slope of 1/4, and it started at positive 3. The last line that I want to show you is when you had a slope of 0 and a y-intercept of 8. So we would start this by saying that y equaled 0x plus 8. Some of you may have changed this equation to say y equals 8 because 0 times any number is 0, and I don't have to have 0 written there. I can say y equals 8. So let's just take a look at how we graph something like that has a slope of 0. Make my xy axis. Now I have a y-intercept of 8, a starting point of 8. So I'm going to draw my x-axis down lower than I have on the last two graphs because I have to be up further on the y-axis. So I have an x-axis here. Whoops, don't need that extra line. I have my x-axis here. I have my y-axis here. And I'm going to start at plus 8. So I start at the origin and I'm going to count up 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So I'm up here. So it looks like I better extend my y-axis a little bit to match so it shows that I'm on the y-axis. So I'm going through there. All right, so I have my first dot at 8. Now I have a slope of 0. That means don't go up and down, but go right and left. Slope is 0. Slope is 0. If you remember from your work with originally with slope, anytime you have a slope of 0, that is a horizontal line. I can just draw my line directly right on here. All right, right on where every spot here on that line, that is where y equals 8. So I drew that a little sloppily. I'm going to clean that up for you. So to repeat, we put our y-intercept of 8. Slope of 0 is always a horizontal line, a flat line. Way to remember that is, if your heartbeat said 0, you'd be dead. That means if you looked at a heart monitor, it'd be a flat line like this. So when you see a slope of 0 to graph, we know we're going to graph a horizontal line. All we have to know is, where do I put it? Put your starting point in the y-axis and draw a straight horizontal line right through it. Go on both sides of that y-axis and you're in good shape. All right, so what do I want you to do? What I want you to do is this. I want you to take your answers from your last assignment from page 207, 1, 2, 12 through 17. You have written there 8 equations. I want you to graph those 8 equations. After you've done your graphs, bring them to me so I can check them over, and then you can turn it in. All right, thanks. Let's get to work.